Gabriel, only 8 years old, lived on the streets of a big city. His large, expressive eyes reflected a mix of innocence and suffering. He wandered the busy sidewalks, seeking shelter and a bit of food to survive another day. Life on the streets had hardened him, but his heart remained kind and full of dreams. On a particularly cold day, Gabriel was hungry, his clothes torn and dirty, offering little protection against the freezing wind. He walked down the main street, looking at the shop windows exuding warmth and coziness. One of these shops caught his attention, a bakery with its breads and pastries displayed on a counter that seemed like an invitation to a feast. Gabriel hesitated for a moment, knowing he had no money to buy anything, but the hunger was relentless. He decided to go in and ask, hoping someone might help him. As he crossed the bakery's door, a bell rang, announcing his arrival. The aroma of freshly baked bread and coffee enveloped him, making his stomach growl even louder. The salesperson, a middle-aged woman with a stern expression, looked him up and down with disdain. Her face was marked by the hardness of years and a heart hardened for reasons Gabriel didn't know. "What do you want here?" she asked in a cutting voice. "Ma'am, please, I'm very hungry. Could you give me a piece of bread?" Gabriel asked, his voice trembling, his eyes full of plea. The salesperson huffed irritably, without a hint of pity. She shooed him away as if he were an unwanted animal. "Get out of here! We don't give handouts," she shouted, pointing to the door. Gabriel felt the weight of her words like a blow. With teary eyes, he turned around and left the store, his heart heavy. He walked down the street aimlessly, trying to shake off the pain and humiliation he felt. He found a bench in the park and sat down, hugging himself to try to keep warm. While Gabriel sat there, a young woman named Isabella watched the scene from a distance. She was a university student who seemed to have plenty of money. Her elegant appearance and confident demeanor hinted at a comfortable life without financial worries. However, Isabella had a generous heart and was always moved when she saw children like Gabriel struggling to survive. She approached cautiously, sensing the sadness emanating from the little boy. She sat next to him, keeping a respectful distance. "Hi, my name is Isabella. Can I sit here with you?" she asked with a welcoming smile. Gabriel looked at her, surprised by her kindness, but distrust quickly took over his eyes. He nodded slightly, without saying a word. "I saw what happened at the bakery. That was very cruel," she said softly. "You're hungry, aren't you?" Gabriel nodded again, unable to find words. Isabella then took out a fresh loaf of bread from her bag and offered it to him. "It's not much, but I hope it helps a little." Gabriel took the bread with trembling hands and began to eat, feeling a wave of gratitude but remaining silent. Isabella noticed his shyness and tried not to pressure him. "You can call me Isa. And you, what's your name?" "Gabriel," he replied almost in a whisper, not lifting his eyes from the ground. Isabella and Gabriel sat together for a while. She listened patiently, trying to gain his trust, but Gabriel, battered by life, remained reserved and scared. Every word he spoke was a timid murmur, every gesture laden with caution. "I know things are tough for you," Isabella said after a long silence. "I want to help you. You don't need to worry about anything. I promise I'll take care of you." Gabriel looked at her, his eyes revealing a mix of hope and fear. Isabella's promises sounded sweet, but he had learned the hard way that not all promises were kept. Isabella noticed his hesitation and tried to reassure him. "You don't have to decide anything now, but know that if you ever need help, I'll be here for you." After the conversation, Gabriel felt a whirlwind of emotions. He wanted to believe in Isabella, to trust her, but the fear and distrust were too strong. In the dead of night, as Isabella looked at the horizon, Gabriel made a decision. He got up slowly, thanking her with a look and a timid wave. Isabella smiled, thinking he was just stepping away for a moment. However, Gabriel began to run, his small feet pounding the ground with urgency. He was fleeing, not from Isabella, but from the fear of being hurt again, from the fear of believing and being disappointed. Isabella noticed Gabriel's flight and stood up suddenly, calling after him. "Gabriel, wait," she shouted, but her words were carried away by the wind. Gabriel ran as fast as he could, feeling his heart pounding wildly. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew he needed to get away. The darkness of the night enveloped him, and he disappeared among the shadows of the streets, leaving Isabella behind with a heart tight with worry and an unfulfilled promise of help. Isabella felt the sadness and pain of the poor little boy because she had once been homeless. She vividly recalled the day her parents abandoned her. Isabella was only 4 years old and didn't understand what was happening. Her parents took her to a park and simply said, "Wait here." Then they turned their backs and walked away, disappearing into the horizon. She stayed there alone for hours until a passing couple saw the helpless little girl. Feeling the pain and anguish in Isabella's expression, they approached, trying to understand what had happened. "Hi, sweetheart, where are your parents?" asked the woman, kneeling to be at the girl's level. Isabella just shook her head, unable to articulate the abandonment she had just suffered. Tears began to stream down her dirty face. "Don't worry, my love," said the man with a gentle smile. "We'll take care of you." They took her home, gave her a warm bath and clean clothes. That night was the first of many where Isabella found safety and love in that couple's house. After a lengthy legal process, they adopted her because they couldn't have children and had always dreamed of being parents. Isabella grew up in a home full of care and support, where she learned the value of love and compassion. The years passed and Isabella grew up in an environment of luxury and comfort. Her adoptive parents were wealthy and provided her with a life full of opportunities. However, she always valued every penny they spent on her education, knowing how blessed she was to have been taken in by them. Now, at 25, Isabella was studying medicine at a prestigious private university. She knew she owed everything to her adoptive parents. Without them, she didn't know where she would be today. As she walked to the parking lot where her car was, after the encounter with Gabriel, Isabella couldn't stop thinking about the poor little boy on that cold night. What are this poor little boy's nights like, my God? What has he gone through in life? And his parents, where are they? She thought, her heart tight. She got into her car and drove home, but the image of Gabriel didn't leave her mind. When she arrived, she found her mother in the kitchen preparing dinner. "Mom, I need to tell you something," said Isabella, taking off her coat and hanging it on the chair. "Sure, dear, what happened?" asked her mother, turning to her with a worried expression. "Today I saw a boy on the street. He seemed so small and helpless. I went into a bakery and saw him being kicked out without any pity. He was so hungry, Mom. I tried to talk to him, gave him some bread, but he seemed so scared. In the end, he ran away," Isabella recounted, her voice trembling with emotion. Isabella's mother sighed deeply, wiping her hands on her apron and sitting down next to her daughter. "That reminds me so much of the day we found you," she said softly. "You were so small and vulnerable. I'm glad we could make a difference in your life, and now you're trying to do the same for another child. But Mom, what if he doesn't trust me? What if he keeps running away? Asked Isabella, with tears in her eyes. You did what you could, my love. Sometimes all we can do is offer help and hope. The rest is up to them. But you planted a seed, and that is important. Isabella knew her mother was right, but the worry about Gabriel still consumed her. That night, as she lay down, she couldn't stop thinking about the boy. Memories of her own childhood came back with full force. She remembered what it was like to be alone, scared, not knowing if anyone cared enough to help. As the night progressed, Isabella tossed and turned, trying to find comfort. The memories of her childhood brought her both pain and gratitude. She remembered how her adoptive parents found her, offering her a new beginning. She remembered the first night in her new home, when, for the first time in a long time, she slept in a warm and safe bed. Dear, I know it's hard now, but I promise we're here for you, her adoptive father said that night, stroking her hair as she snuggled into the soft sheets. Thank you, Daddy, Isabella replied, her voice still trembling but full of hope. The years passed and, with the constant support of her adoptive parents, Isabella thrived. They encouraged her in her studies, helping her discover her passion for medicine. When she decided she wanted to be a doctor, they were there to support her, even if it meant financial and emotional sacrifices. We believe in you, ISA. We know you can make a difference in the world, her mother said, holding her hands firmly when she received the acceptance letter to medical school. And now, thinking about Gabriel, Isabella felt the same determination as her parents. She wanted to make a difference in that boy's life, just as her parents had made in hers. Determined not to give up, she planned her approach for the next day. The following morning, Isabella woke up early, determined to find Gabriel again. She dressed quickly and left the house with a focused mind on what she needed to do. She returned to the square where she had last seen him, hoping he would be there. After a few hours of searching, she finally spotted him, huddled behind a bench, trying to hide from the world. Isabella knew she had to be patient and gentle, just as her parents had been with her. She sat on the bench a little distance from Gabriel and waited. The cold wind blew, but she didn't care. She was determined to show Gabriel that he was not alone. Gabriel, she called softly after a while. I know you're scared, but I just want to help. He looked at her with big, frightened eyes, but he didn't run this time. Isabella continued talking about her own story, about how she was abandoned and found by kind people who helped her have a better life. I know what it's like to be alone and scared. I know what it's like not to trust anyone. But you don't have to go through this alone. I'm here for you, Gabriel, she said, feeling the tears rolling down her face. When Gabriel saw the tears falling from Isabella's face, he was worried and moved. Approaching timidly, he asked, Please, don't cry. Did I do something bad to you? He asked, his voice full of concern and innocence. Isabella quickly wiped the tears away, shaking her head. No, dear, you did nothing wrong, she replied, extending her hand to the little boy. I just get sad seeing how much you've suffered. I want to help you if you'll let me. Gabriel looked at Isabella's hand, thoughtful and hesitant. It was hard for him to trust anyone after everything he had been through. At that moment, the bakery clerk, Maria, passed by and saw the touching scene. With a malicious smile, she didn't miss the opportunity to make a cruel joke. It looks like the little thug found a sucker to take care of him, Maria said with a tone of disdain. Isabella felt a wave of anger rise within her. She stood up and faced Maria, her voice firm and full of indignation. How dare you talk like that about an innocent child? "Who are you to judge someone who only needs help and compassion?" said Isabella, her words as sharp as blades. "You have no empathy. It's easy to judge and mistreat when you're on the comfortable side of life, but you never know what someone has been through." People in the square stopped to watch the scene. The silent support was evident in their reproachful looks directed at Maria. Gabriel, observing Isabella's courage, smiled for the first time in a long time. He felt defended and valued, something that hadn't happened in a long time. Maria was furious, but she left in silence, her steps hurried and tense. As she headed to work, she went to the bathroom and let out a scream of rage. "Who does that little princess think she is to treat me that way?" she shouted, punching the wall. Maria was visibly upset. The bakery owner, who was observing the scene, silently noted her behavior. He knew it didn't align with the store's customer service policies, but decided to stay quiet for the moment. Meanwhile, Isabella turned her attention back to Gabriel. She offered her hand again and asked gently, "Gabriel, where are your parents? What happened to them?" Gabriel hesitated for a moment but then decided to tell his story, still afraid of being judged. "I ran away from home," he said, his voice trembling. "My parents didn't want me, just like they didn't want my sister. They said I was just an extra expense, that I was only a burden." Isabella felt a tightness in her heart upon hearing that. She looked more closely and saw marks on Gabriel's little arms. With determination, she decided that he needed a safe and loving place. "You don't deserve this, Gabriel. I'm going to take you to my house. My parents are very kind, and they will help you," said Isabella, with a firmness that reassured Gabriel. Arriving home, Isabella's parents were horrified to see the state Gabriel was in. Without wasting any time, they took care of him as if he were their own son. "Oh my God, Isa, what happened to him?" asked her mother, already running to prepare a warm bath. "He was mistreated by his parents, Mom. We can't leave him like this," replied Isabella, helping her mother. Gabriel was bathed, fed, and a special room was prepared for him. That care and affection were completely new to him. He felt safe for the first time in a long time. "Gabriel, this is your new home, for as long as you need," said Isabella's father, with a welcoming smile. After ensuring that Gabriel was comfortable, Isabella decided to take him to the doctor for a full evaluation. She took him to her professor at the university, a respected forensic doctor. "Professor, I need your help. This is Gabriel. He was mistreated, and I need to know the extent of the damage he suffered," explained Isabella, concerned. The professor, a middle-aged man with a serious look, examined Gabriel with care and gentleness. He asked several questions and noted all of Gabriel's responses. "This boy has been through a lot," said the professor after the examination. "There are clear signs of physical and emotional abuse. He will need a lot of help, not just medical but also psychological." Isabella thanked the professor, feeling more determined than ever to help Gabriel. She knew the journey would be long and difficult, but she was willing to do whatever it took. "Thank you, Professor. We will take care of him," said Isabella, holding Gabriel's hand firmly. As they returned home, Isabella talked with her parents about what the doctor had said. They agreed that Gabriel would need continuous support and a lot of love to overcome his traumas. "Isa, we are all in this together. Gabriel is now part of our family," said her father, with an encouraging smile. A few weeks passed, and a couple who appeared to be in their 40s, dressed simply and with faces marked by the hardness of life, wandered the streets asking about a boy matching Gabriel's description. Marcos and Rafaela, Gabriel's parents, were determined to find the boy, but for reasons very different from those of true parents. "Have you seen a small boy, brown hair, big eyes?" Marcos asked everyone who crossed his path, holding a photo of Gabriel. Rafaela, next to him, maintained an expression of false concern, but her eyes shone with evident greed. "He ran away from home. We are desperate to find him," she said, trying to sound convincing. The truth is that Marcos and Rafaela were not always like this. 25 years ago, when they were young, they lost everything in a financial scam that left them penniless. Bitterness grew, and in desperation, they tried various ways to survive, often illegal. This spiral of poverty and despair led them to make unthinkable decisions. At that time, they had a daughter of only 4 years old. In a moment of despair and cruelty, they abandoned the girl on the streets and went on to live their lives in the worst possible way, believing that this would give them a chance to start over. 20 years later, they had Gabriel. Life had not improved, on the contrary, their choices had led them down an even darker path. They used Gabriel to carry out scams, mistreating him physically and emotionally. The boy was just a tool for them until he ran away. One day, as they wandered the streets, they passed by the bakery where Maria worked. When they showed the photo to Maria, she immediately recognized the boy and did not hide her disdain. "Oh, the little thug," said Maria with a cynical smile. A rich, arrogant girl took him to her parents' mansion. Rafaela's eyes sparkled with a mix of greed and malice. Marcos looked at his wife with a look that clearly said they had a goldmine in their hands. "Do you know where this house is?" Marcos asked, trying to sound worried, but his tone betrayed the eagerness in his intentions. "He is our little boy. He ran away and broke our hearts," said Maria, eager for revenge against Isabella. She did not hesitate to provide the information. "Of course, I'll show you the way." "That little daddy's girl needs a lesson," she said, resentfully. Rafaela noticed the resentment coming from Maria and decided to use it to her advantage. "We suspected someone was mistreating our little boy on the streets. You know how children are these days, don't you?" Rafaela asked with an expression of false concern. "Oh yes, of course, but I'm sure it was that rich girl who did it." "Always clinging to the boy as if he were a new toy," Maria replied, venom in her voice. The conversation between the three snakes was long and drawn out. Rafaela and Marcos spoke about their suspicions and the need to rescue Gabriel, while Maria fed their accusations with lies and exaggerations. "We need your help, Maria. If possible, can you testify that you saw her mistreating our boy?" Marcos asked, trying to involve Maria even more in their plan. "Sure, I'll help with whatever is needed." "That girl will pay for what she did," Maria said, willing to go to the end in her revenge. Meanwhile, Marcos and Rafaela recalled their own stories of pain and suffering. Years ago, they lost everything in a financial scam and, desperate, abandoned their little daughter. The anger and despair transformed them. Over time, they began to see Gabriel as a means to survive, exploiting him for their fraudulent schemes. Now, with Maria's help, they felt more confident in their plan. That same day, after the conversation with Maria, Marcos and Rafaela headed to Isabella's house, their hearts filled with greed. When they arrived, they were impressed by the grandeur of the mansion. The wealth and luxury evident in the residence made their eyes shine even more. Marcos knocked on the door forcefully while Rafaela adjusted her expression to look more desperate. Isabella answered, surprised to see an unknown couple there. "Can I help you?" Isabella asked with a curious expression. "We are looking for our son Gabriel. He ran away from home, and someone told us he is here," Rafaela said with a trembling voice, forcing a tear into her eyes. Isabella was shocked and immediately worried about Gabriel's well-being. She knew something was not right but didn't want to risk the boy's safety. "Gabriel is safe here, but how can I be sure you are really his parents?" Isabella asked, staying firm. Marcos showed a photo of Gabriel and documents claiming to be his parents. "Please, we just want to take our son home," Marcos said, trying to sound sincere. Isabella hesitated. She knew Gabriel had fled a terrible situation but didn't want to cause more problems for the boy. "Gabriel is sleeping now. We can talk more about this and ensure he stays safe," Isabella suggested. Of course, let's talk inside then," Rafaela said, trying to hide her impatience. They entered the house and began discussing Gabriel's situation. Meanwhile, Gabriel, who was upstairs, heard parts of the conversation and felt a chill down his spine recognizing his parents' voices. He knew he couldn't go back to them, knew what awaited him if he were taken back. As the discussion continued, Gabriel, in panic, began looking for a way to escape or hide. Isabella, noticing the boy's nervousness, tried to calm him. "Gabriel, it's okay. I'm here to protect you," she whispered, hugging him. Marcos and Rafaela, realizing they were losing Isabella's patience, began to pressure her more. "He is our son, we want to take him now," insisted Marcos, his voice growing harsher. "I won't let you take him without talking to the authorities first. Gabriel has marks on his body that need to be explained," Isabella said firmly. The tension in the room increased. Isabella knew she had to act quickly to protect Gabriel. She picked up the phone and started dialing the police. "What are you doing?" Rafaela shouted, trying to grab the phone. "I'm ensuring Gabriel's safety. If you are really his parents, you won't have a problem with this," Isabella replied, determined. Marcos and Rafaela realized their plan was failing. They exchanged furious looks and decided to leave before the situation worsened. "This isn't over," Marcos said in a threatening voice as they walked out the door. Isabella locked the door behind them and turned her attention to Gabriel, who was trembling with fear. "I promise I won't let anyone hurt you, Gabriel. We'll get through this together," she said, hugging him tightly. That night, Isabella told her parents everything, who were horrified to learn of Gabriel's biological parents' intentions. "Don't worry, Isa. We'll protect Gabriel and ensure he stays safe," her father said firmly. With her parents' support and her own determination, Isabella knew they could face any challenge ahead. And together, they began planning the next steps to ensure Gabriel was safe and protected, finally finding the peace and love he deserved. Then, Isabella hired a private detective and asked him to scout the square and surrounding areas to find out everything about those two. She showed him the security camera recordings. "Mr. Cardoso, I need you to find out everything you can about these people." "Here are the images of them," said Isabella, handing him a USB drive with the recordings. "Leave it to me, Miss Isabella." "I'll start immediately," replied the detective, carefully observing the images. With the images of the two in hand, Mr. Cardoso began his investigation, determined to gather all possible information about Marcos and Rafaela. He knew there was something very wrong and needed to help Isabella protect Gabriel. Meanwhile, Isabella sought the forensic doctor's reports. Gabriel's exams were all ready. The doctor, who was her professor at university, was willing to testify on her behalf. "Professor, I need your help. Gabriel's exams clearly show the abuse he suffered. Could you testify if necessary?" Isabella asked, her eyes full of concern. "Of course, Isabella. I'll do whatever it takes to help Gabriel. The reports are ready, and I can testify at any time, replied the doctor firmly. However, that wouldn't be enough. Isabella remembered the day of the altercation with Maria in the square and decided to go to the bakery to ask her to testify the truth, that the boy was abandoned on the streets. When she entered the bakery, Isabella was direct. Maria, I need you to tell the truth about Gabriel. He was abandoned on the streets. I just want to help him, Isabella said, with a pleading tone. Maria lost control and laughed loudly, with disdain. What's wrong, little princess? Daddy's girl wants to say things aren't always as the princess wants? Maria mocked. I'll do everything to make sure you fail. Mark my words. Isabella was shocked by the response and left the bakery horrified. As she walked down the sidewalk, trying to process what she had just heard, a hand touched her shoulder, and a soft voice said, "Let her celebrate her victory." When Isabella turned around, it was the bakery owner, Mr. Alfredo. "Mr. Alfredo," Isabella began, surprised. "I know the whole truth. I saw the little boy abandoned on the streets, and you were the only one who helped him." "Don't worry, Maria will get what she deserves," Alfredo said with an encouraging smile. "Thank you, Mr. Alfredo. Your support means a lot to me," replied Isabella, feeling relieved. Meanwhile, at Isabella's house, Gabriel was starting to feel at home. He was sitting in the kitchen, eating a delicious slice of chocolate cake. His eyes sparkled with joy. "My mom was sometimes kind and made this for me. She said my sister loved chocolate cake," said Gabriel, while savoring the cake. Isabella smiled and said, "I also love chocolate cake." "It's true. When we adopted Isabella, we discovered that chocolate cake was a true passion for her," added Isabella's mother, smiling at her daughter. Isabella's parents then asked, "You have a sister, Gabriel?" "Yes, but I don't know her. My parents abandoned her in a square and left. They told me this was over 20 years ago," replied Gabriel, sadly. Isabella was thoughtful and asked, "How old was your sister?" "She was only 4 years old. My parents couldn't raise her and left her in the square," Gabriel explained. Everyone in the kitchen was a bit shaken by this information, realizing the coincidence. Isabella, feeling a mix of emotions, wanted to focus on the present. "Gabriel, nothing bad will happen to you. No one will take you from this house," said Isabella. The boy looked at her, feeling safe and loved for the first time in a long time. He knew that with Isabella and her family, he had finally found a home. That night, as everyone prepared to sleep, Isabella talked to her parents about the day's revelations. "It's quite a coincidence, don't you think?" she asked, still processing the information. "Yes, it's quite a coincidence. But we need to focus on protecting Gabriel," her father replied, thoughtfully. "We have to ensure he is safe. And if there really is a connection, we will have to discover it together," her mother added. Isabella felt determined to protect Gabriel and uncover the whole truth about the past that unexpectedly united them. She knew the journey would be difficult, but with her family's support and the help of Mr. Cardoso and the professor, she was ready to face any challenge ahead. Gabriel's parents then filed a lawsuit against Isabella and counted on Maria's help to testify. But they had no idea that Isabella and her family were steps ahead of them, and the victory went to Isabella. The judge granted Gabriel's legal custody to her. In the courtroom, the tension was palpable. Rafaela and Marcos, seated on one side, cast angry glances at Isabella and her family. Maria, beside them, wore a smug smile, believing her testimony would be decisive. However, Isabella was prepared. She had medical reports, testimonies from trustworthy people, and most importantly, the truth on her side. The judge began the session, his firm voice resonating through the room. "We will first hear from the biological parents of the boy Gabriel," he said, pointing to Marcos and Rafaela. Marcos stood up, trying to appear dignified and concerned. "Your Honor, we are here because our only concern is the well-being of our son. He was taken by this woman without our consent. We just want to have him back," said Marcos, his voice trying to sound emotional. Rafaela let fake tears roll down her face. "Gabriel is our boy. He needs us," she added, her voice trembling. The judge looked at Isabella. "Miss Isabella, what do you have to say in your defense?" he asked. Isabella stood up, keeping calm. "Your Honor, Gabriel was found abandoned on the streets in deplorable conditions. I have medical reports proving the abuse he suffered and testimonies from people who can confirm he was in danger. My only goal is to ensure Gabriel's safety and well-being," said Isabella, handing the documents to the judge. The judge examined the reports and called the forensic doctor to testify. Isabella's professor took the stand. "Doctor, can you tell us your findings?" asked the judge. "Gabriel shows clear signs of physical and emotional abuse. The marks on his body indicate a pattern of continuous mistreatment. He was severely malnourished when he came to my office," explained the doctor firmly. The judge nodded and turned to Maria. "Miss Maria, I understand you have something to testify against Miss Isabella," said the judge. Maria stood up with a malicious smile. "Yes, Your Honor. I saw this woman take Gabriel from the streets. She is an arrogant little princess who doesn't really care about him. She's just trying to look good," said Maria, with disdain. Before the judge could respond, Mr. Alfredo, the bakery owner, stood up. "Your Honor, may I speak?" asked Alfredo. "Of course, Mr. Alfredo, what do you have to say?" asked the judge. "I am the owner of the bakery where Maria works. I saw Gabriel abandoned on the streets and saw Isabella help him. She was the only one to show compassion and care. Maria is lying out of personal revenge. And I want to take this opportunity to say that Maria is fired for her unacceptable behavior," declared Alfredo firmly. Maria was left speechless, her confidence crumbling. The judge observed everyone's reactions and made his decision. "Based on the medical reports, the testimonies, and the evidence presented, I declare that Gabriel's legal custody remains with Isabella. The boy's well-being is the priority here. It is clear that he will be better off under Isabella's care," said the judge, banging the gavel. Rafaela and Marcos left in a rage, without looking back. In the end, Isabella felt a wave of relief. She had won the battle, but something deeper had been awakened in her. Some memories began to surface. She remembered being 4 years old. She remembered Rafaela crying as she said goodbye to her and Marcos forcing her to finish it quickly. Yes, Marcos and Rafaela were Isabella's parents. But she preferred to leave those memories buried for now. It was a moment of victory and time to focus on the present. When she returned home, she was greeted with warm hugs. Gabriel was especially radiant, feeling finally safe. "We won, Gabriel. You are officially under our protection," said Isabella, smiling. "Thank you, Isa. I knew you could do it," Gabriel replied, his eyes shining with joy. "Let's celebrate," suggested Isabella's mother, bringing a tray with chocolate cake and juice. As everyone gathered in the kitchen, the atmosphere was one of celebration. Gabriel felt part of the family, and this was evident in every smile and shared laugh. The next day, when she woke up, Isabella felt invigorated. She knew the legal battle was won, but the challenge of taking care of Gabriel and discovering more about his past still remained. Gabriel, upon waking, ran to the kitchen where Isabella and her parents were having breakfast. "Good morning," Gabriel said, smiling. "Good morning, champ," replied Isabella's father. "Ready for a new day?" "Yes," Gabriel replied, sitting at the table. Isabella looked at him and smiled, feeling grateful to be able to offer him a safe and loving environment. She knew that with her family by her side, she could face any challenge that came their way. A few weeks had passed since Isabella won the legal battle for Gabriel's custody. Rafaela and Marcos, now imprisoned for mistreatment and child abandonment, were awaiting trial. However, Isabella felt there was one last thing she needed to do. With her family's support and a heavy heart, she decided to visit her biological parents in prison. She arrived at the prison with firm steps, but a heavy heart. Memories of her childhood, abandonment, and pain returned with full force. After identifying herself and going through security procedures, she was led to a visiting room. Marcos and Rafaela were there, handcuffed and with hardened expressions. The tension was palpable. What are you doing here?" Marcos growled upon seeing Isabella enter. Isabella took a deep breath and sat down in front of him. "I came to confront you. I came to reveal who I really am," she said, looking directly into her biological parents' eyes. Rafaela looked confused, but a shadow of recognition crossed her face. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice trembling. Isabella took out a photo from her bag. It was an old picture of her at 4 years old. "This is me, the daughter you abandoned over 20 years ago," Isabella revealed, placing the photo on the table. Rafaela gasped, bringing her hands to her mouth. Marcos just narrowed his eyes, his face hardening even more. "You are our daughter," Rafaela murmured, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, it's me. I'm here to tell you that I will never forgive you for what you did. You abandoned me like I was nothing, and now you did the same with Gabriel," Isabella said, her voice full of pain and anger. Marcos scoffed, disbelieving. "We don't need your forgiveness. We did what was necessary to survive. You were just a victim of the circumstances," he said coldly. Rafaela, however, was sobbing. "Please, Isabella, forgive me. I was weak, I was desperate. I never stopped thinking about you, regretting what we did," Rafaela pleaded, her tears falling non-stop. Isabella felt her own tears welling up, but kept her voice firm. "Your apologies don't change what happened. You destroyed my childhood and almost destroyed Gabriel's. I can't forgive that," she said, feeling the pain transform into an overwhelming wave of sadness. Rafaela reached out, desperate. "Please, daughter, forgive me," she begged, but her words were interrupted by sobs. Isabella stood up, unable to bear more. The tears finally streamed down her face as she looked at her biological mother breaking down in front of her. "Goodbye, Rafaela. Goodbye, Marcos. May you live with the weight of your choices," Isabella said, her voice choked with emotion. Marcos remained silent, his eyes cold and unyielding. Rafaela continued to cry, murmuring pleas for forgiveness. Isabella turned and walked out, leaving them behind. As she passed through the door, she felt a wave of relief and overwhelming sadness. When she left the prison, Isabella let her tears flow freely. There were no words to describe the pain and relief she felt. When she reached her car, she found Gabriel and her adoptive parents waiting for her. Gabriel ran to her, hugging her tightly. Is everything okay, sister?" he asked, worried. "Yes, it's fine now," she replied, hugging him back. Isabella's adoptive parents embraced her too, offering the comfort and support she needed. "Let's go home, dear. You did what you needed to do," her adoptive father said with an encouraging smile. As they drove home, Isabella felt a sense of inner peace. She knew the road ahead would still be difficult, but she had her family, she had Gabriel, and she had the strength to move forward. The past might have been painful, but the future was full of possibilities and love. Upon arriving home, Isabella looked at Gabriel, who was playing in the yard with a genuine smile. She knew that despite everything, she had managed to protect and offer him a better future. And that, for her, was the greatest victory of all. So, what did you think of the story? Don't forget to comment, like, and share the channel. Until next time.